Hello, dear friends. Today we continue our acquaintance with the surprisingly candid and detailed memoirs of a Wehrmacht general. Don't forget to rate the video, and let's get started. June 13th, 1941, the city of Slutsk. You gradually die from the heat and dust. Every day it gets hotter and harder. You don't want to eat, only drink. Whenever possible, we move with the troops only in the evening and at night. It is simply impossible to endure during the day. Today, the heat is so oppressive that even writing letters is barely bearable. The sun hardly shows itself, but it creates such heaviness in the air that it is impossible and unappealing to do anything. Yesterday, I flew to Minsk. At an altitude of 600 meters, it is beautiful. A stunning view, endless forests, rivers winding like snails, toy-like marching columns below. In Minsk, half destroyed, only a few multi-story Soviet palaces, the Gauleiter's house, the university building, and the Red Army house have survived. These were pretentious, ugly palaces, all hung with paintings praising Stalin, Lenin, Kalinin, and other bigwigs. All the churches here, in real Russia, were destroyed. The crosses were removed from the bell towers. The local Greek Catholic church in Slutsk was destroyed. The Gauleiter's house is being built from its bricks on the same site. The Roman Catholic church has been turned into a mineral water bottling plant. The Protestant church has been attached to a factory. As far as we have seen, all the churches in the villages have been converted into fire stations or warehouses. Will the wrath of God descend upon these destroyers? Now this accursed war against the gangs is beginning, and we will have to clear the forests. July 20th, Bobruisk. We have been in Bobruisk on the Berezina for about a week now. For 4 days, the Russians have been attacking our right flank. There have been critical situations. Tomorrow we want to go on the offensive ourselves and hope that it will be successful. The Russians are very strong and fight desperately, encouraged by their commissars. The battles in the forest belt are particularly difficult. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a Russian appears and opens fire, attacking columns, individual fighters, or vehicles with liaison officers. By any standard, the war here is very difficult. First of all, there are unimaginable transportation difficulties, vast expanses, endless forests, language difficulties, and the like. All previous campaigns were more like child's play compared to the current battles. Our losses are significant, and the Russians are very, very great. Hartmut has been fighting near Smolensk since yesterday. We can only pray to God every day to protect him. He is on the front line. The terrible leaden heat has now given way to cool weather. My health is fine. Sleep is short, and the nervous tension is sometimes considerable. As a form of relaxation, I swim in the Berezina every day, or fly on the stork over the forests between my two groups. It takes 75 kilometers by car on bad roads. July 22nd. Yesterday we forced the enemy, the Russian 66th Corps, which wanted to break through to Bobruisk, to retreat. Unfortunately, they managed to slip out of the prepared encirclement. We gave them a good beating, but again, it is not a complete victory. The soldiers let us down a little. They are a bit slow because of the heavy and difficult fighting. Russian gangs, which are now everywhere in the forests, are a distinctive feature of this war. They attack individual soldiers, but do not dare to approach large units. But they also suffer losses in forest skirmishes. All battles are fought very cunningly by the Russians. In cornfields, they fall to the ground, pretend to be dead, and shoot our soldiers in the back. In response, our guys kill Russians without mercy. No previous campaign can compare to this one. Yesterday and the day before, I spent several hours returning home. Many kilometers alone through the forest, where fighting had taken place that afternoon. Not a pleasant experience. Our boys are physically exhausted. Yesterday I saw carters fast asleep in front of their carts. Unprecedentedly long marches. Monstrous roads that no one in Germany can even imagine. Great nervous tension, not only because of the constantly changing situation, but also because of the danger of being attacked at any moment. All this is extremely exhausting. Nothing like this has ever happened in any previous campaign. Moreover, no one knows how long the campaign will last. There is no end in sight, despite all the successes achieved. One would like to hope that Russian resistance will one day come to an end, because the situation that has arisen for them is far from desirable. On the contrary, it is extremely bad. For the second time, their defenses have been breached in several places, but the cut-off troops are fighting stubbornly, and there is no impression that the Russian will to resist has been broken as a whole, or that the people want to get rid of their Bolshevik leaders. So far, there is a feeling that even if Moscow is captured, the war will continue somewhere in the depths of this endless country. July 26th. All I can say is that God saved me. 3 days ago, I was watching the attack when a Russian 10.5-centimeter shell exploded 25 steps away from me and knocked me off my feet. I was half deaf for several hours. Then Russian tanks appeared behind the command post, and finally, the plane that was supposed to take me back exploded and burned 2 steps away from me. Enough for one morning. July 30th. The enemy opposite us is surprisingly active and strong. Early in the morning, although not at full strength, he attacked the 134th Division. 75 defectors came over to our side a few hours later. It's incomprehensible. It's always the same. In general, the Russians fight with fanatical tenacity, but each one individually emphasizes his weariness of war, his desire to defect, his hatred of the commissars who force them to go into battle at gunpoint. These two positions are difficult to reconcile. If the latter is true, then someday everything must collapse. My corps has to get out of a hopeless situation. Endless fighting in the forests will break our troops. The Bolshevik war of pinpricks is wearing them down. Even the best soldier cannot repel an attack in these forests and swamps. August 1st, 1941. The city of Bobruisk. Yesterday I watched the new episode of Wochenschau, which ended with scenes of the battles for Libau. It was reported that Libau had been completely destroyed by the Bolsheviks. Houses could still be seen on the screen, but it was impossible to tell whether they had been burned down or not. Very often the city is described as completely destroyed, but much of it is still standing. But it's a lottery, and you can't rule out the possibility that your property has been burned down. We continue to tackle the thankless task here, which makes no one happy. Although the ardor of the cavalry corps in our rear has been gradually cooled, the disgusting swampy and wooded terrain, bad roads, and the fatigue of the troops hinder much that would otherwise seem self-evident. We underestimated the Russians. It has always been said that they are poorly commanded. An assessment of their current command abilities shows that our operations have temporarily stalled, and our soldiers fear Russian treachery. But every day we see about 100 people defecting to our side. Perhaps one day, when the ordinary soldiers no longer want to fight, the whole thing will collapse at once. For now, they say they don't want to fight, but the commissars are forcing them to. It's all a bit confusing. A monstrous energy mercilessly mobilizes all forces and sends soldiers into battle without regret. This is how the Russians have achieved successes that our previous opponents could not. Our losses are also significant. The campaign against Russia has claimed at least as many lives as all other campaigns combined. So far, it is completely unclear how things will end here. There is no sense that the Russians will ever want to surrender, as the French did. It is possible that in winter we will face a war of position deep inside Russia. The mere thought of this makes everyone wildly happy. The whole situation here is extremely primitive. Bobruisk, a city with a population of 91,000, most of whom have been evacuated, is a dirty hole consisting mostly of wooden buildings. The main street resembles Nassergarten in Königsberg. There is no furniture in the houses. The people have nothing, as everything has been taken from them over the last 20 years. Our interpreters tell us that people are happy about the arrival of the Germans. There is no doubt that it will be a blessing for the whole world if Bolshevism, its methods, and its influence are wiped off the face of the earth. It is a nightmare, but this disgusting beast is fiercely defending itself. August 3rd. It is amazing how stubbornly the Russians fight. Half of their units are destroyed, but they replenish them with fresh soldiers and go on the attack again. I do not understand how the Russians manage to do this. Prisoners insist that it is all due to pressure from commissars who shoot anyone who disobeys. But it is impossible to keep troops in combat readiness with such methods. Our rapid advance has turned into a slow crawl. It is impossible to predict how far into Russia we will advance as long as the resistance remains so stubborn. Perhaps one day it will cease. For now, however, the uncertainty remains. Sometimes we wonder what winter will bring. We will probably have to stay in Russia. It seems unlikely that the Bolsheviks will agree to peace or drive Stalin out altogether. So we will face winter in positional battles along the entire vast front line. A pretty prospect. August 4th. Everyone here is in a gloomy mood. Decisions are hanging in the air, and we want to get out of a situation that we don't like at all. Every day brings a new crisis, nerve-wracking moments, and we are fed up with Bobruisk. Besides, the lifestyle here is not very healthy. Too much meat in the diet at the expense of everything else. Too much smoking. Not enough exercise. Constantly getting up in the middle of the night because of this or that, and then feeling half broken during the day. All our thoughts revolve around our combat concerns. There is no time to relax. There is nothing good here. Let me know the street and number of your house in Lebau. I will try to find out through Berlin whether it is still standing or has been destroyed. August 9th. Village of Parici. On August 5th, we attacked the opposing forces and forced them to retreat 40 kilometers. The enemy initially retreated, which made the fighting easier than we expected. Nevertheless, it cost us 400 lives. That is quite a lot for such a battle. At the end, a Russian cavalry division attempted to break through our lines, but we were able to repel their attack and they suffered heavy losses. Since then, horses without riders have been running around everywhere. They will be very useful to us, as just the day before yesterday we lost 90 of our own horses, when our own forces bombed us by mistake. Unfortunately, many soldiers were also killed. The Russians' new habit of mining roads, which has already caused considerable damage, is very annoying. The enemy we've been fighting so hard against is finally totally defeated and has very little strength left. We even managed to capture 2 Russian staff cars with their divisional clerk. The female typist in a blue skirt and white blouse ran away at the last moment. The clerk told us that a few days ago their division commander had been demoted for poor leadership and sent to command one of the regiments of his former division. Tomorrow, new battles await us. The Russians, however, are quite battered. It is simply a miracle that they find the strength to resist time and time again, despite the losses and damage they have suffered. Now it all depends on who is more persistent. Since there are numerous examples of the disintegration of Soviet troops, it should be assumed that one day, though not soon, the whole front line will collapse. Entire companies have already defected to us. And the demotion of commanders at all levels is also a bad sign. August 18th, letter to my daughter. Thank you for your regular Sunday letters. I couldn't write as before, as too much has been happening for several weeks now. I also lacked the peace of mind to concentrate on writing a letter. Your letter describing the horse camp was handed to me on August 15th. Around 3 in the afternoon, I returned to our command post, which is located on the outskirts of a large village high above the Dnieper. Shortly before that, I was in the division stationed in another village. Sitting over the maps, we heard the roar of heavy artillery fire, with shells falling 250 meters away from us. We continued our conversation. Then a second volley was heard, and the shells landed much closer. We got out of the car, and then a third volley was heard, striking 50 meters from our car. Shrapnel flew around us, embedding itself in the walls. We then drove out of the village and ended up right under the fourth volley, which hit the field to our right. It was not a pleasant experience. When I returned home after that, I received your letter mentioned above. I put it on the table to get changed. I had only just taken off my clothes when 2 shells exploded with a hiss behind my house. I didn't have time to put on my underwear before the next ones exploded, and so on. Your little letter lay in front of me, and I thought it had been written in another world, not this one. As soon as I put on my pants and shirt, another volley of fire hit the neighboring houses. Without buttoning my uniform, I finally ran out of my house with my leggings in my hand, but I didn't even make it out the door before the shells started howling again. All I could do was throw myself to the ground, and then something hit nearby, sending shrapnel flying everywhere, embedding itself in walls and tree trunks. With one leap, I reached a pit 1.5 meters deep that someone had dug, and found several people in it. For 20 minutes, volley after volley struck 30 meters from our pit, and my house was riddled with shrapnel. Then everything calmed down, only to start again unexpectedly a quarter of an hour later. I had just gone to pick up your letter when the second blast caught me right in the house. This time it was shorter, but quite intense. As you can imagine, this prevented me from reading your letter. All the windows in our houses were blown out. A nearby house collapsed. A telephone car was destroyed. We had 7 wounded, and many soldiers and horses were killed in the village. We left the village, and thank God we did, because at 1:30 in the morning the shelling resumed. Being caught in shelling while asleep and in the dark would have been doubly unpleasant. But even in the new village, 5 kilometers from the old one, the Russians shelled us at night, with shells landing 500 meters away from us. Finally, the commotion ended. There was little to be happy about. As of today, we have 6,200 prisoners, 35 captured guns, not counting a large number of weapons and vehicles. Have a nice vacation in Glottertal. Report to the family, August 18th, 1941. Thanks to the actions of our Corps, we managed to create the conditions for encircling several enemy divisions. Yesterday, the bulk of these enemy units attempted to break through our positions. It was a lousy day. At 3 a.m., significant enemy forces found themselves inside the bridgehead we had created, and our troops had to fight in all directions. By the second half of the day, we managed to hold back the breakthrough, but with heavy losses on our side. We have regiments that consist of only 2 battalions, and only 5 guns remain in 1 artillery battery. However, the attempt to break through was repelled, and today only prisoners are coming out of the forests. Unfortunately, the bulk of the Russians we held back were taken prisoner by the Corps advancing towards us. There are about 20,000 prisoners there, and we have about 5,000 more. The total number, of course, will grow to 30,000. This is a heavy blow for the Russians, who are forced to throw into battle units that have been cobbled together, who have almost no full divisions left, and who have had to leave an as yet uncounted amount of artillery and equipment in the forests. In operational terms, the entire southern half of his central front line has fallen, which will have far-reaching consequences. So, we can look back on the past 10 to 12 days with satisfaction. For me personally, they were not easy. We had to overcome some very critical situations, and the tension sometimes reached breaking point. It's not very pleasant to drive around the area alone all the time, except for a few guards, for miles and miles through forests where you can run into Russians at any moment. After all, the fronts are so stretched out and so fragile that our own troops and the enemy often mix with each other. 8 days ago, at a critical moment, I took command of a battalion in which everything had gone awry. And 2 days ago, the Russians drove us out of our command post with 2 heavy batteries, and it was only by a miracle that we got away with only 7 wounded. Each of us gave our all, and we can only be grateful that so far everything has gone well for us. There have been many occasions when things could have turned out differently. I am writing from a tent near a half-collapsed collective farm barn on the edge of a potato field, from which the Russians fired heavy shells at us from a distance of 200 paces just yesterday. But now all the guns are silent, and they will never fire at us again. They are standing somewhere in the middle of the forest, and the artillerymen have been taken prisoner. According to the order we captured, my first opponent, the general commanding the 66th Corps, was tried by a military tribunal in early August. Another commander of the 63rd Corps, along with his 2 commissars, was shot by our soldiers during yesterday's attempted breakthrough because he refused to surrender. Things are boiling and bubbling on the other side. Complete collapse is just around the corner. That's all for today. If you like the video, please support it with a like and subscribe to the channel. See you all soon.